your name?
Why are we here, Hilda?
We're here because there are over 2,500 Cubans all over South America, Central America. After January 12th, they lost their automatic deportation. So they left Cuba before January 12th, thinking that if they made it somewhere to South America and Central America, they will eventually walk themselves. After 2 months of walking, they will make it to the U.S. border. When this happened, they did not expect their automatic asylum to be off. So 35 were there at that time. Today we have 970 at the border. We have all over South America Cubans, 300 in Panama right now, who were told that within the next 30 days they're going to be sent back to Cuba. We have hundreds in Costa Rica, Ecuador. They're hiding because they don't know what's going to happen to them. So we're bringing attention and sending a simple message. Do not send the Cubans back. Can you give them a place in your country? Can you give them a little hole where they can just be productive members of that country? They know the U.S. dream is over. They understand that. They just want to be parts of those countries. Mexico has been great supporting the community. We have Cubans in 15 different churches and all over Ladero. The Cuban community have sent truckloads of food, and we're collecting again. Today we heard that the Ecuadorian community in LA has put together a 44-foot truck of supplies to the Cubans. So now it's up to us to pick them up in LA, pick them up in Bakersfield, pick them up everywhere, and take them, because it takes $2,500 to send the truck or to drive the truck over there. We don't want to send it empty. The Cubans are okay in Mexico right now. We're just asking for the ones all over it. There are 71 of them that were sent between the Panamanian border and the Costa Rican border 3 days ago. When they were dropped off there, they were told, go ahead and cross. Well, the Costa Rica government doesn't want them. So when the Costa Rica government got them, they said, go back to Panama. And Panama says, go up to Costa Rica. So they went to the hills. And what happens when you go to the hills, people get lost. The drug cartels take them. A lot of things are going on that is just unbelievable.
I have a question.
Yes.
What's the risk people are taking, by going to these countries? Because you mentioned that a lot of these countries in Central and South America are not cooperating. They're not trying to help the refugees. So what's the risk that they face if they go back to Cuba?
Oh, well, when you arrived in Cuba, because there's only one airport and one centralized government, they are going to depart the plane, all are going to be processed. Process in Cuba means anything they want. There is no rule of law. There's only one newspaper, 2 TV channels, and the government is a totalitarian government. So the way it's going to happen, we know for sure, each one of these people are going to be taught a lesson. The lesson can go from broken fingers, broken face, months in jail to let you cool off, in a very hot cell, to you were treason, you're accused of treason, you said things, threatened the president when you were out, and it could go to years. We have plenty of documented cases. This happens in Cuba every day. Every day the sun comes out is a new rule. Growing up in Cuba, we used to say the 3 a.m. call. And the 3 a.m. call is when they come in and you hear someone scream, but only one scream. And you go outside and you look and the neighbor is being picked up, but no one says a word. And then the neighbor, the next morning, you go quietly and say, where is he? And this happens in every street. Because when you have a totalitarian, I would love for people to Google the word totalitarian. It is impacting. It shocks you what totalitarian means. It's a government that has no rules and rules itself and creates its own rules. So what will happen to these Cubans? It is the same that will happen at any concentration camp where the rule was to the right or to the left. To the right or to the left. There is no rule. If we knew there was a rule, we can understand, but there isn't. And Castro is patiently waiting for them. He has made deals with Panama. He has made deals with our country, that he was going to treat them in a dignified way. Well, the person that he made the deal with is no longer a president.
How can the community contact representatives? Because this is a national issue, right? In
Yeah.
regards to immigration and asylum. How can one speak to a congressman? Can a congressman maybe take action, or what's your point of view on that?
We hope so. We hope this is about other governments getting attention and saying the U.S. is watching.
Or maybe like the embassies of other
Correct.
countries?
Correct.
What can we do as a community?
Bring attention to our congressmen and bring attention to national. When Panama, Honduras, Ecuador, Costa Rica, wherever our Cubans are all over, when they know that the U.S. is watching, they're more careful of treating these people like they're just trash. They don't have a country. And they can say to Castro, we have a deal. Send us 1,000 doctors and we will send your Cubans back. So all these countries are in a trade. Who are they in a trade with? They're not in a trade with human rights. And it's not the people, it's always the government. It's the officials of corrupt governments all over South America. The people of South America have been great. It's the government, it's the officials. When the president of Panama came to TV yesterday, the day before, he said the 300 Cubans being housed at the Catholic Church in Panama City are going to be deported in 30 days. The deacon or the priest who is in charge of that facility and have been feeding the Cubans for 2 months and 3 months came on national television and said these words, and you can Google it, you can look it up. Mr. President, you ruled over Panama, we ruled over the church. You come after these people, you have to take us. Give them asylum. We have a census, we have 8 doctors, we have 50 nurses, we have 50 engineers. Make them part of Panama. Don't deport them. It is if you Google, if you care enough to look into what is going on with the news, it gives you chills because you see people standing up. You see the Mexicans queuing for feeding the Cubans when they never met them. You see the Ecuadorians putting trucks together. These are people without a country. And so we understand they lost the American dream. We understand that. They understand that. They just don't want to be deported.
So how many cities are doing something like this right now around the United States?
It was a very short notice this week. We have tried to go by peaceful means, reaching out to Cuban senators and the administration, and nothing has happened. So when the crisis happened this week, that the Cubans were thrown out into the borders back and forth, we said we have to do something. So right now we have Miami, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, San Bernardino, Kentucky, they're all over. It was very hard to organize because this is not a national movement. And when you don't have a national movement, I got a request this morning. I got a message this morning from a Cuban in Kentucky. He said, "What do I do? I want to do something today." A woman posted from El Salvador in a room. She said, "I'm here. I'm hiding in this room, but I'm much rather be here than in Cuba. So this is my home now."
She's from El Salvador.
No, she's from Cuba.
Oh, she's Cuban, but in El Salvador.
Correct.
Okay.
What happened is they were letting them come through. No problem. You can go through and make it to the U.S. border. When this crisis happened and they started saying, well, Costa Rica is saying, you're not sending them to me because I'm not sure that Nicaragua wants them. And so they stopped moving along. That is exactly what happened. That's why they were stranded. But no Cuban ever left and crossed 2 countries to be stuck in a country and be a burden to that country where they're illegal there. That makes no sense. The reason that we have 300 in Costa Rica or 300 in Panama or hundreds in El Salvador and Nicaragua is because they were on their way to somewhere. And now this country, the reason Costa Rica said to the Cubans yesterday, you can't cross over, is because they're not sure. They're going to be stuck with them.
The migration has become longer for Cubans, right?
Correct.
Because now they have to go around. They have to go through
The hills.
South America and Central America and Mexico in order to get to
There's
the United States.
the ones in Ladero, Mexico right now, they left in September. They left Cuba in September. By December, they were in Panama. In January, they were crossing over when they stopped. So we're asking if the U.S. promised Castro 20,000 visas, why can't we give 2,500 of those to these people? Oh, because they were not promised for those people. They were promised to Castro. So he can pick and choose. The reason Venezuela is such a mess is because Castro has sent 1,000 supposed doctors to Venezuela. They're not doctors. They're party people. They're creating chaos. He was about to send 2,000 to the U.S., and we just stopped them. We said thank you, but no thank you. We don't want 2,000 doctors.
I have a question because other Latinos, I'll be frank, other Latinos are not, as I've expressed to you,
Sure.
they're not supportive of the Cuban people.
Absolutely.
Because they've been, in many instances unsympathetic. Not all Cubans, but
Correct.
unsympathetic.
I agree.
Toward immigrant rights and immigrant issues.
Correct.
And so how do you get Latinos on the same page with Cubans now?
It's a very valid question. It's a piece of humble pie, and I tell you why. Cubans have never had an immigration issue. Since 1959, we never had an immigration issue. Now, we're begging every country to let us in, to let us stay. So for the first time since 1960, the Cubans don't know what an immigration issue is. Having said that, I'll give you this piece as a Cuban. Leaving is a struggle. It's a case of life and death. So for us, when we make it out, we think we're done. The struggle is over. And we come here and never have been part of a Cuban rally of an immigration issue. The reason that we have every country behind us is because they know. We don't know.
Right.
We didn't know. And this is the first time we're here. So yes, we're almost begging. Actually, we're begging for political asylum.
Do you have any closing words, Hilda?
Closing words. In a day like today, April 8th, in 1980, April 8th, 1980, I was standing in the Peruvian embassy in Cuba. I had not eaten for 3 days in a row, not a single bite. And I was standing up to my ankles in human waste, unable to move. We opened our mouths, water came from the sky. We lived another day. 5 days into it, which make it 2 more days from today, potatoes were given to every Cuban. It was a single raw potato. Each one of us grabbed the potato, it came from the ground, and the first thing we did was lick the dirt, bite into it, and ate every single bite that we could possibly do, and we were looking for another potato. That was it, that was the meal of the day. Eventually, little yogurts were being given to the kids to under 18. 45 days later, we left the embassy. For 45 days, I had the same clothes on. I never took them off. But in the case of going to the bathroom stall, rinsing the water off, and putting it back on me. It rained every day. Every single day it rained because it's the Caribbean in April. So we stood around every day. The water came down, we washed ourselves. God has a way of taking care of baths. And we just dried off with our clothes on. For 45 days, we had the same clothes on. We eventually left. There were 255 left out of 10,800 Cubans. If you want to know the square of the embassy and figure out 10,800 Cubans, there was a point that we couldn't breathe because we were on top of each other. Having said that, this is a...
sit down?
No, there's no way to sitting down. It was only standing room only, which makes it very convenient when you're fainting because you can't faint. Because you just fall until you come back and the rain brings you back. To describe the Peruvian embassy and what happened there is something that Cubans didn't talk about. My family, we didn't mention it for years. It was too embarrassing to mention. And it was only a year and a half ago that for the first time, I said the words, I stood in human waste for 2 days, and I knew I was standing on it. And there was nothing I could do about it but stand there. So for the first time, I was able to utter those words, and it took me 30-some years. Maybe that explains why Cubans don't get involved once we get here, because we're trying to forget it all. I was 14, it was 37 years ago. There were 255 when we left. A lot of them eventually made it to Peru. Peru saved us that day. Thank you.
Good. They have so many stuff over there and with so many little tools. And they just give you a lot.
In one street, we're able to put together a whole tool set. The guy down the street owns the hammer, the one down the street owns the screwdriver, the other one owns the Phillips head. When we bake a cake, we literally talk to neighbors and said, do you have 2 eggs? And the other one says, I have some flour. And 3 houses down, they said, I have some oil, and that's how we put a cake.
I just have one more question.
Yes.
Is there hope for democracy in Cuba?
That is a good question, because we're asking ourselves. It has been 56 years. So the people that are now 56 years old, they don't know any democracy. They don't speak. They're used to going to school every day and saying the same thing, you know, there's no Caesar, there's no God, we're going to rule the world. So you have to train a 56-year-old and a 30-year-old. And what are we to do? We were able to change dictatorships like Iraq and move it into the right path. I think we will be able to. The older Cubans are dying. We have a 92-year-old today in the vegans demonstration. He was a political prisoner. My sister was married to someone that at 16 years old, he got on a boat, tried to leave Cuba. This is the 60s. He's 16 years old. It's 1960 something. He gets caught. He gets sent back to prison for 15 years. He doesn't leave prison until he's 31. Is that enough reason to send a young man to prison?
Was your father prison?
No, my father was more of a Christian outcast. So they didn't touch him, but they sent him to a work camp as a cook to work for a huge camp that had nothing but homosexuals. They were in prison for being homosexuals. The years were 1977. I was a kid who used to take me to work every day, and they had the siesta for 2 hours, so after lunch I was entertained by 200 very openly gay community who put plays for me and sang for me, and I helped them do their work. Their only reason for being in those work camps is they were gay. Raul Castro decided and came on national TV and decided that, as he calls them, gays are weak. We have to get rid of them.
Yeah.
That's the same president we have today.
Yeah.
So someone who said that, what President Obama did, we don't understand. We are trying very hard to understand. He got a promise from a dictator. He's no longer there. How is he going to keep him up to his promise? The promise was, if we deport him, we'll treat them with dignity. Go to Cuba today, ask a Cuban. Don't ask a politician. Ask a Cuban. What's going on? As you know, uploading videos and taking videos is crime. So anything that goes out of Cuba, people are risking it. We're being more and more bold as the internet goes on, you know. We're being more and more bold and saying more and just saying this is our time now. It has been 58 years. But democracy, long coming. Long coming. Americans, tourists are arriving in Havana every day on these big ships. They're going in, they're buying souvenirs, they're spending a day there, they're seeing the beauty of it and getting back. In the meantime, what's happening? I think people can live without food, and I'm living proof of that. Because when you don't eat for 5 days, you're still good. When you only have, for 45 days, we had a very small meal that included 3 spoons of rice and a little fish. And this was the only meal, no crackers, no snacks, no protein bars, for 45 days. I was 92 pounds when I came. You can live without food. You cannot live without freedom to think, without freedom to speak. You can't. You just can't. You die. And that's where today we're asking, don't deport the Cubans. Don't deport them. We're begging. We're not saying this is our right. We're not. There's no rights. We belong to an island that is hell. We have no demanding attitude whatsoever. None demanding attitude. We're eating a humble pie.